Hello everyone, tonight on Whispered Worlds I want to take you into a tale that has haunted me ever since I first came across it. A tale of a community that simply ceased to exist, as though erased from the pages of history overnight, leaving behind nothing but ruins, silence, and a shadow that still lingers in the valley where it once stood. And as you listen, I want you to imagine yourself there, standing in the cold hush of a winter evening, the snow crunching beneath your boots, the wind moaning faintly through the pines, and the unsettling feeling that eyes are watching you from dark, though no one is there, because this is not just a story of disappearance, but of a place where the line between our world and something far stranger may have blurred for a single night, swallowing everything and everyone whole. The village was small, no more than 200 souls, nestled deep within a valley surrounded by cliffs and pine forests, far away from the larger towns and the spreading touch of industry in the 1800s. It was a place of simplicity, of wooden cottages and farms, of herders and woodcutters, of laughter that carried across fields during harvest and fires that glowed in hearths during winter nights. And yet, even in its most peaceful days, whispers clung to it, whispers of things the elders never wanted to explain, of ceremonies held under the midsummer moon, of prayers muttered in a tongue older than the land's current rulers, of debts and promises that no one outside the village would ever understand. Travelers who stumbled upon the settlement often described feeling unwelcome, not because the villagers were hostile, but because the valley itself seemed to press down on them, the air heavy, the silence thicker than it should be, even the birdsong muted, and those who lingered too long sometimes spoke of lights in the distance, strange shapes in the forest, or voices that spoke when no one was near. Yet the people of the village carried on with their lives, raising children, tending crops, and clinging to the rituals of their ancestors, until one winter when everything changed. It began with signs, subtle at first, then undeniable. Blue lights flickered above the fields at night, shimmering like ghostly flames and vanishing when approached. Livestock grew restless, breaking free of their pens. Dogs cowered and refused to go near the forest's edge, and beneath the ground a low humming vibration was felt, as though the earth itself pulsed with some hidden heartbeat. The elder of the village, a woman named Anara, who had seen more winters than anyone could count, grew restless too, walking from house to house muttering warnings in a language that only a few fragments of meaning could be gathered from, words about debts unpaid, promises forgotten, and something that was coming to collect what was owed. Some villagers dismissed her as merely losing her mind to age, but others felt a tightening in their chest at her words, an unshakable dread that something ancient and powerful had turned its gaze toward them. On the last night, snow began to fall heavily, a blizzard descending upon the valley, thick flakes that smothered sound and blanketed roofs. And within that storm, the village seemed to vanish into silence. When traders arrived days later, they found the settlement in a state that defied explanation. Doors hung open, tables were still set with half-eaten meals, chairs toppled as if people had risen quickly and never returned. Tools were abandoned mid-task, loaves of bread left in ovens now burned black, and water buckets frozen where they had been dropped. But the most disturbing detail was the absence of people. Not a single body, not a single footprint leaving the village, only tracks that began and ended abruptly in the snow, as if their owners had simply evaporated into thin air. Animals were gone too, no dogs, no cattle, no chickens. Nothing remained but emptiness and the faint scent of smoke, as though fires had only just gone out. The silence was overwhelming, so complete that even seasoned traders felt a primal fear swell in their chests, and some swore they heard faint murmurs on the wind. Voices of the missing villagers carried through the stillness, but when they turned their heads no one was there. Word spread quickly, and the valley soon drew attention from priests, investigators, and curious journalists. Each came with their own tools, holy relics, notebooks, lanterns, but none could make sense of what had happened. Some priests claimed the place was cursed, pointing to strange symbols etched into the wooden beams of houses, spirals and circles that glowed faintly in moonlight before vanishing at dawn. Investigators found no signs of violence, no indication of disease, nothing to suggest why an entire population would abandon their homes in the dead of winter without taking clothes, food, or even loved ones. Journalists wrote sensational stories, some claiming cult activity, others suggesting supernatural storms, while skeptics argued the people had fled some unknown threat and perished in the wilderness. But no remains were ever found, no matter how far search parties roamed, not even a shred of clothing or a single bone, and each expedition ended the same way, with the searchers returning uneasy, shaken, and unwilling to speak of the odd sounds they heard in the night. Then came the stories from those who lingered too long in the valley. One search party returned pale and trembling, claiming they had stumbled upon tall stone markers hidden in the forest, carved with strange symbols that pulsed faintly when touched, only for the stones to vanish without a trace by morning. Another account told of a lone child found miles away, wandering aimlessly, mute and pale, who never spoke again, only scratched spirals and circles into the dirt until his death years later. There were whispers of lights appearing above the ruins, dancing in the air like fireflies, but brighter, more deliberate, and when approached they would vanish, leaving behind only the sharp smell of ozone. Some even claimed to hear faint laughter or weeping within the ruins, or to see fleeting shapes moving through the trees. As decades passed, the ruins decayed further, swallowed by creeping ivy and collapsing under the weight of snow and rain. Only fragments remained, a few stone foundations, the outline of a well, broken timbers half, buried in moss. But the valley never lost its reputation. Hikers and explorers continued to report strange occurrences, feelings of being watched, sudden drops in temperature, compasses spinning wildly, or the inexplicable appearance of footprints that led nowhere. A few unlucky ones told far darker stories, of glimpsing the village alive again, whole and bustling, smoke curling from chimneys, voices carrying across fields, only for it to all dissolve into ruin in the blink of an eye. Others returned home shaken, refusing to discuss what they had experienced, as if the valley itself had whispered something they could not bear to repeat. Scientists dismissed the tales as imagination, attributing the disappearance to famine, disease, or landslide. But even the most skeptical struggled to explain why not a single bone, tool, or artifact had ever been found beyond the ruins. Historians pieced together old journals and church records, but every trail led to the same dead end. The village thrived, the village vanished, and nothing more could be said with certainty. Yet for those who stood in the valley, certainty was replaced by unease, by the weight of silence pressing on their chest, by the conviction that the ground beneath their feet held secrets best left buried. And so the legend of the Vanishing Village grew, passed from tongue to tongue, each retelling sharpening its edges, each listener feeling the cold breath of the unknown upon their neck. The valley became a place people avoided, not out of superstition alone, but from instinct, as though the land itself warned intruders away. Even now, long after the last cottages crumbled into the earth, those who walk the paths at night claim to hear faint voices in the wind, whispers in languages they do not know, or the sound of children's laughter carried across the snow before vanishing into silence. The truth, whatever it may be, lies hidden in that valley, waiting, perhaps for someone reckless enough to uncover it, or perhaps for the moment it chooses to reveal itself again. The truth, whatever it may be, lies hidden in that valley, waiting, perhaps for someone reckless enough to uncover it, or perhaps for the moment it chooses to reveal itself again, and it is this uncertainty that gives the story its weight, because what happened to those 200 souls has never been explained, not by logic, not by faith, not by science, and the silence of the ruins speaks louder than any theory ever could. But sometimes silence is not empty. It is full of the things we do not want to hear. Those who dare to camp near the site say that as night deepens, the valley grows impossibly quiet, as though the world itself is holding its breath, and then the sounds begin, first faint, almost indistinguishable from the wind, a child's giggle, the soft thud of footsteps on frozen earth, creak of a door opening where no door stands any more. And if you remain still, if you let the sound wash over you, it is said that the noises grow clearer until you hear entire conversations murmuring around you, conversations in a language no longer spoken, the voices overlapping as though the villagers are still there, caught in a loop of night. They vanished. Some have claimed to see more than hear, figures standing in doorways where houses once stood, blurred as though seen through water, their outlines wavering, their faces unreadable. One explorer described watching a figure carrying a lantern across what had once been the main square, only to realize the lantern's light was blue, unnaturally bright, and the figure's feet did not touch the ground, leaving no imprint in the snow before both light and shape dissolved into the air. Stories such as these pile upon one another, each adding to the legend. Some believe the villagers were taken into another realm, a parallel world pressing close against ours, thin enough in that valley for a doorway to open. Others argue the people themselves had made a pact with something ancient, and had been collected when the time came due. There are even theories of strange energies, magnetic anomalies, rifts in the Earth's crust, unknown natural forces that might have disoriented, destroyed, or even transported them elsewhere. But the most unsettling possibility is that whatever happened is still happening, that the valley is not finished with its work, and that those who linger there too long might one day find themselves counted among the missing. There are reports, buried deep in forgotten newspapers, of lone wanderers vanishing near the site in later years, their camps found intact, their belongings undisturbed, but no trace of their bodies ever recovered. Their names were small, their stories overlooked, but if you dig you find them, scattered like warnings, reminders that the valley does not like to be disturbed. And yet human curiosity is stronger than fear. In the early 1900s, a group of scholars from a nearby university organized a formal expedition to the site, determined to separate fact from legend. They arrived with instruments, notebooks, and enough supplies to last weeks. For the first 3 days, their journals read like any scientific survey, notes on soil composition, sketches of ruined foundations, measurements of the valley's layout, but then the entries shift. One of the scholars writes of hearing whispers while alone by the stream, words he could not understand but which seemed directed at him. Another notes strange lights appearing at dusk, describing them as spheres the size of fists, glowing pale blue and darting among the trees with deliberate motion. By the 6th day, their writing grows erratic. Phrases repeat, words trail off mid-sentence, and then the journals stop altogether. The group never returned, and when a search party was sent months later, they found the camp abandoned, supplies untouched, fires long dead, and the journals scattered as though dropped in haste. Once again, no bodies were ever found. The university quietly ceased funding any further expeditions. With each decade, the village slipped further into obscurity, but the legend never died. Locals avoided the valley, travelers whispered about it in roadside inns, and occasionally a brave or foolish soul would venture in, always returning with eyes too wide or not returning at all. It became a place marked on no maps, a blank spot, a void into which stories disappeared. Some tried to destroy the legend by dismissing it as folklore, but folklore has a way of carrying truths hidden in metaphor. Perhaps the villagers truly vanished into thin air, or perhaps they were swallowed by a storm of snow and shadow, but either way the valley became a wound on the land, a scar that time could not heal. And then came the accounts of those who dreamed. People who had never seen the valley, who lived hundreds of miles away, reported dreams of it. A cluster of cottages beneath looming cliffs, a well at the center, children playing by fences, smoke curling from chimneys. They described it in detail, though none had ever read the old records. Stranger still, some of these dreamers woke with frost on their windows in the middle of summer, or with spirals drawn faintly on their skin, as though traced by a fingertip in the night. One woman swore she returned from such a dream with snow in her hair and the sound of a lullaby still echoing in her ears. Coincidence, perhaps, or imagination, but when dreams align with legends, people begin to wonder if they are glimpsing something real, something reaching across the boundary between worlds. To this day, the valley remains a hollow place where wind cuts strangely sharp and silence presses too heavy. Hikers are warned to stay away, though warnings only tempt the curious. Some bring cameras, recording equipment, devices meant to prove or disprove the supernatural. Most return with nothing but eerie feelings captured on film, distorted sounds, strange static, lights flickering in places where no lights should be. A few, however, return with more. Recordings of whispers saying their name, photographs of figures blurred just beyond clarity, or timestamps that show hours missing as though the devices themselves were swallowed for a while and returned. Those who bring such evidence rarely keep it for long. Hard drives corrupted, photographs vanishing, tapes erasing themselves. It is almost as though the valley does not wish to be remembered, and so the legend persists, unbroken, unsolved. Was it a curse, a punishment, an experiment of forces beyond our comprehension, or simply a tragedy misunderstood and magnified by fear? No answer has ever satisfied. All that remains is the silence of the place and the weight of all who entered and never came out. Tonight you've walked with me through the story of the Vanishing Village. You've felt the cold hush of its valley, the whispers carried on the wind, the lights flickering in the distance. And though you sit safely in your room, I wonder if the valley has felt your attention, if somewhere in its snow-covered ruins the echo of your listening ear has stirred something that sleeps. Legends have a way of traveling, of stretching thin across time and distance, of reaching those who give them space in their thoughts. So if tonight you hear a knock on your window though no one is outside, or catch a flicker of blue light at the edge of your vision, remember that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, some doors not meant to be opened, and some disappearances not meant to be explained. The village vanished once. It could vanish again, and perhaps next time it won't be the valley that empties but the people who wander into its story, carried off into silence, their footsteps ending in snow just as abruptly as those before them. Sleep well if you can, but keep your lights burning a little brighter, for sometimes a legend listens back, and sometimes when the wind is right, the lost do not stay buried in the past. They come looking for company,